What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I am here right now with you to do my post-game analysis for the Miami Dolphins versus Washington Redskins. First and foremost, let me correct myself because I was an idiot when I said that this was an away game for us. For some reason, I had it in my mind that this was an away game and that we were, going to FedEx Field to play them in their stadium. That is not correct. It was obviously a home game for us, although that means that half of our home games have already been played this early in the season. And also our bye was early in the season, so which is problematic considering the fact that we're already massively beat up at this point of the year, let alone how much more beat up we'll be towards the later end of the year when we get there. But we'll get to that in a minute. I do want to talk about the injuries and the inactives. I want to get through all the stats and statistics. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things that, Brian Flores had to say and Dudley Do-Wrong had to say in response to some of the stuff that he said and blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot to talk about. And so let me go ahead and get right into it. Obviously, too, I've got all of the stats, the full game statistics for you as I do every single time. Because I want to make sure that you have all the information and all the context and so on and so forth. There's also an article that I did want to read to you that I thought was really fascinating as well, that's relevant to all of this stuff. So, first and foremost, let me just remind you guys of the injury report coming into this game. So, to be fair, both teams were pretty banged up. I'd say we were a little bit more banged up overall, but we were both teams are pretty banged up, and both teams got even more banged up in this game. For us, Avery Moss and Ken Webster both endured injuries, and so they will likely end up on the injury report after we already had 11 guys on there. So our injury report and so on is growing. I fear that our injured reserve list could grow. I hope not. I want these guys to stay healthy, but again, we're already massively injured, particularly on the defense, as I said would be the case, considering the fact that they've spent far too much time out on the field. They did again this game, and we're just taking hit after hit after hit, and we're not even halfway through the season yet. So it's gonna continue to get worse, unfortunately. I hope not, but you can only hope but so much, right? And of course, their practices are also massively exhausting because Brian Flores decides he wants to run them ragged in every practice. So there's that as well. But anyway, so to the players, we had 11 of them listed as questionable, although we hadn't ruled any out prior to the game or in the last injury report. The list included the 4 players who missed the game against the Chargers. Guard tackle Jesse Davis with an elbow. Safety Bobby McCain with a hamstring and a shoulder. Wide receiver Albert Wilson with a calf and a hip. And cornerback Jamal Wiltz with a groin. All of which actually did end up playing today, which is good. And it is good that guys have, are able to come back and play. Alan Hearns played today. He's out of the concussion protocol. But it is important to keep in mind the injuries that all these guys do have, and note that they're, probably not playing at 100%. That does affect their play and their execution. Also, too, we need to make sure that we keep in mind, how these injuries could potentially get worse. Bobby McCain is one of my fears that he's going to end up on injured reserve having to have shoulder surgery. We'll see. Anyway, all 4 of them were limited in practice all week. As I said, though, they did all play. In addition to the injury report Friday was running back Kalen Ballage, who was listed as questionable with a foot injury. He was a limited participant in practice Friday. The other players listed as questionable were cornerback Johnson Batamosi with an ankle, wide receiver Jakeem Grant with a hamstring, linebacker Trent Harris with a foot, cornerback Xavier Howard with a knee, safety Rashad Jones with an ankle, and cornerback Chris Lamons with a toe. All 6 were limited all week, except for Batamosi, who was a full participant Wednesday before being limited the past 2 days. Washington ruled out 5 players Friday, including tight ends Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis, who weren't terribly missed. Jeremy Sprinkle did a pretty admirable job in their stead, but they were both out with concussions. Also ruled out were linebacker Josh Harvey Clemens with a hamstring, guard Wes Martin with a chest, and safety DeShazer Everett with an ankle. Veteran tackle Donald Penn was listed as questionable with a hamstring. So for us, though, as far as our inactives went for the game, Jakeem Grant was not out, so that obviously did affect our return game. I think Kenyon Drake handled kickoffs, and Preston Williams handled punts. Johnson Batamosi was out. Xavier Howard was out for this game, as we know, with that knee. Running back Myles Gaskin was inactive. Fullback Chandler Cox. Center guard Chris Reed, and center guard Keaton Sutherland. So the big ones there are really Jakeem Grant, Xavier Howard, and even Chandler Cox. And if in this game today, we used a lot of 6 offensive linemen, a lot in our formation, and we still got manhandled. Their defense actually, this game, the reason why it ended up being so close in a lot of ways is just the same principle as people always say is any given Sunday. A couple things fell right. Ryan Fitzpatrick came in the last quarter essentially and, did work a little bit of magic. The Redskins defense was already, pretty tired because it was a defensive heavy game, as I, predicted it would be. I was, to be fair and to be clear and honest, I was off on the score. I said it was going to be 22-9. It ended up being 17-16, which is a positive development. We didn't allow as many points, but we also scored more than I thought, so that is a bright spot to the game. Although it is also, to full context, it is also the second worst team in the league right now, and I mean really the worst NFL team with a roster that actually has NFL caliber players on it. We're kind of like, stuck in that expansion league status with the level of talent and experience and proven production and so on and so forth, and veteran leadership that we have on this team, right? In all those regards, we're kind of on this league way below everybody else, all in our own. But so those were the notable names for the inactives. And that's the injury information. So, look, at the end of the day, again, it ended up being closer than I expected, so that was a positive. But their defense did pretty much manhandle us all day. Like I said, I mean, Fitzpatrick, their defense was tired. It was low scoring, just like I thought. Their defense was tired, and it was, it's a different quarterback with a different cadence and so on and so forth, fresh legs and all that stuff. He ran a little bit, a couple times. So, I mean, and also a lot of the stats are, a good little portion of the stats that we have, or our stats, was bloated a little bit by the sudden influx of yards and whatever that was in the end. Now, but to be fair, give Ryan Fitzpatrick and this offense and whatever some credit, the guys on the field, the coaching, what have you, for getting us back into the game. It actually turned out to be an exciting game. I thought maybe we had a chance to fucking squeak it out, man. I was so hopeful because I was rooting for a win. I do not want us to lose every single game. I do not want us to be historically bad, which, by the way, in that category, we're kind of at a net zero. We didn't really get hurt too bad. Like, we still have the, we're still on pace to be, the worst team in NFL history on both sides of the ball. And like next week, we play the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. I'm pretty sure that game's gonna be at least a mini blowout. I'm pretty sure they are just going to dismantle us. We have to go to Buffalo, play them in Buffalo, and they are like red hot. Those motherfuckers, I think they won again today. But they are just you know, that team is looking great. So again, to be you know, transparent and to be fair and to be clear, you know, I was wrong about the Jets. I thought they were going to end up having a good season, but again, they did have some you know, high-priced free agents that came in before. Yeah, the Jets did. Well, the Jets won today, though, actually, which was interesting, though, 24-22. I do think that the Jets have a bounce back in them. They do have a good squad, but they do have some high-priced free agents and like CJ Mosley and Le'Veon Bell that haven't been living up to their billing, which is not totally, I mean, that's more common than not, right? That's why I don't want us to spend big in free agency. But they did have a bounce back. They beat the Cowboys 24-22. They are now 1-4. And then they had quarterback issues, but with Sam Darnold back in there, he had a pretty damn good game. But I think in the future they will get things worked out. I think I personally have confidence that Adam Gase can do it right, because I really liked how he did things here. And I thought it, you know, as you guys know, if you watch it, I thought he was cut off prematurely for reasons that, you know, weren't under his control, and simply because he refused to tank when Stephen Ross demanded it. Right. So, you know, next week, and so again, to be clear on what I consider a mini blowout, if you get defeated by, what is it, 15 to 24 points, and then a full-on blowout is 25 points or more. I mean, I don't know if you guys think the standard should be different, you know, whatever, but that seems reasonable to me when I thought about it. So, you know, just kind of, because I wanted to kind of, you know, figure out a way to like quantify the severity of it, because I think that is important. Right. And so again, part of the reason why, you know, this was so close is because it was the, you know, aside from us, the worst team in the league. And, you know, I mean, their kicker missed a field goal. That was part of it. There was some penalties that hurt them. There were some bad calls on both sides of the field. So, you know, I mean, it was just, this whole game was a mess, really. But anyway, so, I don't think things are really, from my perspective, things do not appear to be trending up at all, especially with the way the injuries are mounting up. Like I said, Avery Moss and Ken Webster were added to that list in this game. But anyway, let me go ahead and start getting into the statistics. Again, I feel like the score was closer than it probably should have been. But that is a positive development. You know, I mean, it's the lowest, but see, I mean, it's kind of hard to praise it. Like I want to look at it as if it's a bright spot, right? But it's really not, because again, I mean, the Redskins are just not a very good team. You know, they've been in massive flux with their quarterback situation, and they just fired their head coach, right? Let's keep that in mind. All of this, that, and the other, and you know, it really, like, yes, we only kept them to 17 when we've given up 30 plus in all the other games, but all those other games, the teams were far more complete with much better offenses. You know, I mean, and yes, we scored 16. That's a season high, but season high, it's week 6. We've now played 5 games. We are now 0-5, and we finally got up to 16 points, right? And real quick, so there's one of the things that I wanted to say that Doug remarks about, you know, Doug. So first of all, Doug commented in response to Brian Flores' response to why he put Fitzpatrick in there. So apparently, or well, not apparently, but in Brian Flores' press conference, he said that he was just trying to look for a spark, right? But keep in mind, though, this is, after all, after he had said that, you know, Josh Rosen is definitively our guy for the rest of the season. So even after this terrible performance by him, because it was terrible, we would expect that he's still going to be out there next week, you know, even after this, right? Based off of that comments. But, then he does, put Fitzpatrick in there. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad move. I did think it was a good move. Because again, their defense was tired. It is a fresh quarterback with a different cadence and a different rhythm and so on and so forth. He was able to take advantage of some things and he got us close. So again, credit to them for it where it's due. But we should be careful about how much was given overall. But anyway, so that's what Brian Flores had to say about it. About why he did it. And then, a couple things Doug said is one, it shows that Brian Flores is trying to win. And it means he's trying to win because he put Ryan Fitzpatrick in. But the reason why putting Ryan Fitzpatrick in shows that you're trying to win is because he's clearly the better quarterback. And then he goes on to say, today he clearly played better. Yes, he clearly played better, but it was for one quarter, and it was in garbage time when their defense is really tired, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so what the fuck does that mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything. Because, and then he goes on to say that Josh Rosen throws 2 picks, which he did, fact. And they were pretty ugly picks, totally on him. Absolutely. But I seem to remember him and everybody else saying after Ryan Fitzpatrick threw 2 pick sixes, even though one of them wasn't his fault, that was really more Kalen Ballage's. But after Ryan Fitzpatrick threw 2 pick sixes, and he had thrown additional interceptions, like 1 or 2 other interceptions in addition to that. I think he has 4, actually. So, after 2 pick sixes, everybody was like, oh yeah, Rosen needs to be in there. He's clearly the better quarterback. But why really? It was mostly based off of because he made a rise, and more importantly, Fitzpatrick fell a bit in training camp and preseason. And I was saying back then that you need to be careful about how quickly you're going to judge Rosen and say, oh, see how much of a comeback he made on Fitzpatrick? That's why I said Fitzpatrick, of course, is going to end up being the starter, even though Rosen actually is the better quarterback. But to be clear, that is a lot predicated on the fact that he's a lot younger with a lot higher upside. So if he keeps being put into these terrible situations, he might not ever, be better than Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he might wash out of the league sooner rather than later. But if he actually gets a stable situation, he could be certainly better than Ryan Fitzpatrick is at his best. So Rosen is the better quarterback. But as I said back then, in large part because of that sudden and drastic closing of the gap, which was, I said, more in part or more due to the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick fell off a cliff, as it was, Josh Rosen improved. Everybody started jumping on that train and was like, yeah, he needs to play. But I said it, Fitzpatrick will start within 2 to 4 weeks, depending on if and when he gets hurt, or depending on how bad he plays. He will eventually get benched for Rosen, which did happen after 2 weeks because he played so atrociously, including multiple picks, including 2 pick sixes. And so everybody was like, Josh Rosen, he needs to play. And I thought the same thing because I was saying that from the beginning. But everybody was like, all of a sudden, because he was like, or everybody was like, Josh Rosen needs to play, and see, he's so much better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. And now all of a sudden, after Josh Rosen has a bad game and throws 2 picks, not pick sixes, but just picks, well, now all of a sudden Ryan Fitzpatrick is the better quarterback? Like, come on. Really? Get the fuck out of here. I mean, that's just wild. Anyway, continuing on though. So let's go ahead and get into some of these statistics. As I mentioned, I was trying to get into before. I told you a little bit though. We are now 0-5 on the season. We are now we are continuing our winless streak. So for all of those that are hoping for losses, you're getting what you want. This regime is getting what they want. People can continue trying to make arguments that they're not doing this on purpose, but the evidence is mounting. It's getting worse and worse and worse, and more on, the side of this is 100% deliberate, not just from the systemic teardown of like the roster and so on and so forth, but also and the way that they're even handling certain situations. And so, I will get into that in just a minute. But actually, I'll get into it in just a second. So we're 0-5. The Redskins are now 1-5. We lost 17-16. This is actually a good time to get into this. So again, the team was playing like absolute garbage for the entire game. Okay, hot garbage, a hot mess. But so were the Redskins. Although, to be fair, both defenses were playing solid. It was a punt-heavy game, a very defensive-heavy game. Again, as I said it would be. Again, I said I did say that they would stifle our run game, which they did. I did say that they would win the turnover battle, which they did. All of those things helped them to end up winning the game, and so on and so forth. So, but 17-16, right? So we end up losing the game because we played terrible. So Brian Flores says, okay, it was I think a minute or something like that left in the third quarter. So barely at the very, very end of the third quarter, not really even any of it, right? So it was basically just the fourth quarter. Ryan Fitzpatrick comes in. Their defense is tired, so on and so forth. Some fresh legs with him. He did, like I said, ran a couple times. And he illustrated, some good things, right? And there was some competency to that offense there, and especially towards the end, trying to be quick and move the ball, whatever. They ended up getting the touchdown. 2 touchdowns at the end of the day, but one of them was a rushing touchdown, one of them was a passing touchdown. The only passing was from Fitzpatrick, but they were close, man. So again, give them credit for getting up there, climbing in. But what happened, right? So then we get the touchdown, and there's 6 seconds left on the clock, right? And so what's the decision? 6 seconds left on the clock. The smartest thing, really, honestly, would be give yourself the best opportunity to fight this out and kick the extra point, because that's the most probable thing that could happen, right? It's a chip shot, field goal, tie it up, take it to overtime, maybe try and get the, both offenses have sucked, but Ryan Fitzpatrick showed that, he can do some stuff against them. He went down and put up a touchdown on them, right? So, give him an opportunity in this offense. If you can win the toss and get the ball first, if you can go down and score a touchdown, that's game in overtime. So that's a win. That probably would have been your best opportunity. Or, even if they got the ball first, you could potentially stop them because it was a defensive heavy game. And then you give it to Ryan Fitzpatrick to try it. And if you get a touchdown, it's game. If you just get a field goal, then they get to try again. But the odds of you winning this game are actually far higher if you would have taken it to overtime and in the various different situations in which that could have played out based off of how this game went, right? So why wouldn't you do that? Okay, well, maybe you want to be aggressive and show that you're not trying to lose by being aggressive, so you go for the 2 points, and because you want to make it 18-17 and steal that victory in the last second, so it's all super heroic. Okay, I get that to some degree, but at the same time, that is foolish. It's foolhardy, right? So at very best, their excuse could be, incompetency. at very best, because maybe you just don't have the acumen to realize that your chances of winning this game, if that's really what you want to do, if your chances of winning this game are going to be far greater if you go to overtime. So at best, it's incompetence. At worst, it's deliberance, right? So they did it intentionally. And then especially when you see how the play unfolded, right? I mean, there were missed blocking assignments. There was poor execution all around. Kenyon Drake dropped the pass, but even if he didn't, he would have gotten leveled behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, it was just an entire mess. But right from the beginning, the decision to do it started that mess. And then, every single little bit of along the way, every step that they took then along the way, every second that passed, because I think even the Redskins, took a timeout at some point, right, to, ice, whatever. I mentioned that in the live stream. So, your chances are going down and down and down. So why would you make that decision? Right? So that brings me to this article from The Ringer. The Dolphins won the Tank Bowl by losing. Now, also, let's keep in mind, though, that there were a bunch of drop passes, so that's still an affliction on this team. Anyway, so Riley McAtee wrote this. The Dolphins won the Tank Bowl by losing. So, yes, they did win the Tank Bowl, that's for sure. But I don't think that they won anything at all. I mean, they didn't win the game. And again, I think this is going to be a massive backfire in the effort. So anyway, a drop pass on a bizarre late 2-point conversion attempt allowed Miami to keep its winless record intact against Washington and continue to confuse the football watching public. Now that the Dolphins have been slapped with the tanking label, although I don't know why now all of a sudden they would be slapped with it, because it's been clear from Jump Street, except for all of those people who are actively trying to deny it. It's difficult to tell whether anything they do is a result of the organization intentionally trying to lose games to gain better draft picks, or just the byproduct of wildly incompetent decision making. First of all, both of those are terrible places to be. It's not a good place to be when your organization wants to intentionally lose. I don't care if it is for hope of the future. I mean, I think that's even more reason not to do it, because there's no guarantee for the future. Absolutely no guarantee for the future. So why would you do that? Why would you tear down like this to begin with? But whatever. But even for the future, it's not acceptable. Or wildly incompetent. Really? So they're just stupid as fuck? So that's the other option? Either they're stupid as fuck and they just don't know what the fuck they're doing at all, which I think that there is a high level of that, but I do also believe that there is a high level of they are intentionally trying to lose. He continues, wait, Riley. It could be a girl. So, this writer continues, let's see. For example, did Miami trade promising young players in Laramie Tunsil and Minkah Fitzpatrick because the front office wants the roster to be worse in the short term, or because the offers for those players were simply too much to pass up? See, in that regard, I personally believe that, well, if I'm being completely honest, I think it's a mix of both. But here's why I say it. I believe it's the former part of them wanting the roster to be worse in the short term, because I literally think that they want that. They want us to be as bad, now and potentially, probably next year as well. So that way we can get super high draft picks like the Browns did or whatever. Again, still not a proven theory. Get those, really high draft picks, and then just, supposedly stockpile all this talent, so on and so forth, what have you, cap space. They want to be big spenders in free agency, which I'm totally against. But they want to do it, right? And so, I think that they literally do want us to ensure, literally, they want to do everything they can to make sure, just like all of the fans that want us to lose every game, to guarantee the first round pick. or the first overall pick, excuse me, because Stephen Ross is like so blood-suckingly hungry for a, you know, his precious franchise quarterback that, you know, he's literally willing to do absolutely everything. So what does that mean? And he's also said, and to some degree this is a good thing, but in his tenure it's proven to be a bad thing because he's terrible at it, but he's willing to throw any amount of money at it. But what does that mean? That means in free agency. So what he wants is he wants to go get his little jewel of a quarterback, number 1 overall, and then he wants to put him behind like one first round pick and, you know, 1 or 2 high-priced free agents that you're going to have to way overprice to even entice, to come here because of this mess, who are, you know, in the middle or the back end of their primes. You have to worry about them getting hurt, so on and so forth, and hoping that that's going to solve the problem when that's been a proven failure even here. So, like, it's just the same old, and it's going to be a massive backfire. Not to mention, what if the NFLPA and the NFL don't come to an agreement, and after the 2020 season, there's a shutdown, a lockdown, a player strike, and we don't even have football? And what if that extends through an entire season, and we, you know, waste a year of Flores' contract and you know, of momentum, if you want to call it that, in this rebuild process? Just saying, right? So there are so many data points to suggest that this is going to be a massive dumpster fire explosion that, you know, goes nuclear, that, I mean, it's just ridiculous that people support it. But anyway, let's continue on. So clearly so to the other part of that, too much to pass up. Look, you know, first of all, I don't think that it was, you know, fair compensation, because again, Laramie Tunsil is a generational talent at left tackle. It was the only, at that point in time, the only for sure lineman you had. You know, he's in his prime. You drafted him, all that good stuff. Kenny Stills is a proven commodity. You know exactly what you're getting for him. Minkah Fitzpatrick has proven at free safety, and he's been doing very well for the Steelers at that position. So, I mean, like, you are literally, so, you know, because one of the things everybody says about those first round picks is, yeah, but you know what, though? We could potentially get, or we're definitely going to get a quarterback that we, you know, may or may not actually work out to replace the old crusty veteran that we brought in, and the other guy that used to be a former first round pick that ended up getting traded for a second and a fifth round pick, and then could potentially just be a complete waste because he gets usurped by the next couple years of drafting a quarterback high. Well, god damn it. I mean, like, what kind of fucking madness is this? What kind of fucking madness is this? So you get rid of these proven guys for hopes and dreams. No guarantees, nothing like that. It's just, it's literally, you know, just grabbing around into thin air, hoping you're gonna fucking snag something. Like, it's insanity. Let's keep going. Do they keep yanking Josh Rosen and Ryan Fitzpatrick in and out of the lineup because they're trying to figure out which quarterback is better or which quarterback is worse? I find it unfathomable that they're trying to figure out which one is better. I mean, they know what Ryan Fitzpatrick is. They got a pretty damn good idea of what Josh Rosen is. There's obviously less tape on him because Ryan Fitzpatrick is old as fuck. But again, he's far younger and has a higher ceiling. I would say that on that alone, he's the better quarterback. But like, it's really just, I mean, which one is worse? I mean, I literally think that they're just, you know, intentionally trying to fucking make sure that there's constant flux, right? Like, so going into this game, we had yet another starting offensive line, right? Every single game we've gone into, we've had a different starting offensive line this season. Every single one of them. Same thing again. Why, dude? If you want to have consistency on your offense, you need to have consistency on your offensive line. Even if they, like, and especially considering the fact that they are so lacking for veteran leadership, talent, experience, and proven production, all the things that I mentioned before. They're so lacking in those departments that they need time to be able to work together. So why are you constantly fucking moving it around so much? It is not necessary. For injuries, yes, but beyond that, it hasn't all been because of injuries. So why? Like, it's absolutely fucking maddening. Continuing on, the 0-4 Phins played the 0-5 Skins in the Tank Bowl on Sunday, and in that game, this mystery was pushed to new limits. Of course, now it's the 0-5 Dolphins and the 1-5 Redskins. In the waning seconds of the fourth quarter, down 7, Miami scored a touchdown to pull within 1 point of Washington. Rather than kick the PAT and play for overtime, the Dolphins went for 2. A somewhat odd decision for a team playing at home. Here's what they drew up. And so it basically just shows, Ryan Fitzpatrick dropped back a couple steps. He throws a screen pass to Kenyon Drake, who didn't even catch the ball. But even if he did, he had like four Washington Redskins bearing down on him to tackle him behind the line of scrimmage. Just no chance at all across the board, right? And so, but then there's the angle that, like, right, because Doug was trying to be like, kept saying, oh, but the execution was so poor. And then they'll try and defend Brian Flores by saying, yeah, but they're working with a really super young, inexperienced team. But that was by their design. They didn't have to do that. They chose to do that. So they don't get slack for those reasons. No, they get blamed for those reasons because they created that problem. They didn't have to create that problem. They chose to create that problem. And so it was a massive disaster that shouldn't have even occurred. They should have just kicked the extra point. They should have taken it to overtime, where again their chances were far better. This was a tit for tat on defense. So if the Redskins got it first, you stood a good chance of stopping their offense with your defense. Even though they weren't playing particularly great, and the statistics bear that out, which I still haven't gotten even into all the statistics, but the statistics bear that out. They didn't play particularly great and even got gashed on a few occasions. Okay, but they still had a far better chance of, holding them in that situation than your offense did on the goal line with 6 seconds left in regulation, down by 1 point, going for the 2-point conversion in the way you did. And let me also mention, though, that while I was wrong in my score prediction, I said it was going to be a 22 to 9 game. The reason why I said that, as far as the 9 points for us, is because I said that either Jason Sanders was going to miss the extra point, or they were going to have a 2-point conversion that failed. So I was off a little bit on the score, but there were some things even within that I was right. Again, they won the turnover battle. I was right about that. It was a defensive heavy, low-scoring game. I was correct about those. And we did end up having a failed 2-point conversion, and that cost us the game. It wouldn't have been, in a 22 to 9 situation. In that situation, you really wouldn't even be able to say, that a 2-point conversion attempt that was failed would have really done you much. Because if you would have got it, you'd have had 11 points. 22 to 11, you still fucking, it's a 2-1 score. You still got fucking mopped, right? But in this case, since it was so close, that's why the call was so, dumbfounding. Why would you take such a massive risk for no reason? Your chances were far greater. And then again, if your offense took the ball first, right? Or real quick, going back to the other scenario, if your defense stops them, right, and gets Ryan Fitzpatrick the ball, he had shown, even though it was, limited time and their defense was tired and stuff and everything. So you got to be careful about how much credit you give him. But in that situation, he can take advantage of that, and he did. And that's how we got so close to actually winning this game and had a chance. But it started with Brian Flores' decision to not kick the extra point. Was there a failure later on in the execution? Absolutely. Was there a personal failure by Kenyon Drake by not catching it? Absolutely. But that never should have occurred to begin with, because they should have been playing it in overtime, trying to give themselves a chance. But then if Ryan Fitzpatrick got the ball to start with, either way, you would have stood a pretty damn good chance of winning that game. He chose not to. So, look, I mean, the evidence is starting to really mount, and we're not even halfway through the season yet. And again, we already know that part of the reason why Gase was fired was because Stephen Ross went to him and said, I want you to tank so we can get a quarterback in the 2020 draft. I want you to tank the 2019 season so we can get a quarterback high in the 2020 draft. Gase refused. And then, lo and behold, the very next coach, and then also there were reports that among other coaching, potential coaching hires for the head coaching job, that was a major point of emphasis, that they wanted to make sure that the next guy that was going to come in was going to be, willing to tank. And then lo and behold, we get Brian Flores, a guy who, with absolutely no fight, I mean, you could at least protest it a little bit to make it seem like, you really are against tanking like you supposedly say you are, and make it seem like you actually do believe it's disrespectful, right? Instead of just brazenly lying to everybody and then systemically through your actions, on and off the field, are clearly proving otherwise. So, I mean, the evidence is mounting. And then they show a slow motion angle of it and how impossible it was. The plan was to quickly get the ball to Dolphins running back Kenyon Drake, while the two other receivers on the play opened a lane for him to find pay dirt. But Drake dropped the pass, and the Dolphins' hopes of notching their first win went with it. Of course, this play would have failed no matter what. The Dolphins did not have enough blockers for Drake to make anything happen, even if he caught the football. So again, and part of Doug's weird, like, alternate reality defense is that the two receivers that were there, like, totally whiffed on their blocks. I mean, even if that was the case, there was, which it certainly was for at least one of them, without question, one of them did whiff, and that was the guy who immediately tackled Drake, as soon as he dropped the ball. But there were also at least 2 to 3 other defenders bearing down in on him. So let's do the math there. If there's a total of 3 or 4 defenders coming in and you have 2 blockers, well, it doesn't matter if those 2 blockers are perfect on their execution on their guy. You still have potentially 2 other guys coming in to make the tackle. And then if he gets halted and held up even for half a second, then you have reinforcements. So no matter what, even the design of the play was completely set up and doomed for failure. Not to mention, they had pretty much started sniffing out our screens, in the middle. We had a couple of them that were okay, but I mean, they pretty much sniffed them out all game. I mean, let's be honest. So, I mean, the entire thing was super, super questionable. The decision to call the 2-point conversion instead of the PAT was super questionable. And the decision on the play call itself, the screen pass, was with the way that it was designed with only 2 blockers. Especially with the numbers, because Fitzpatrick maybe could have checked, slid some protection to get some extra help over there, but that didn't happen. right? But he's a veteran guy who's supposedly better than Rosen, and that's why he should be in. I mean, it doesn't make any fucking sense. And it's just back and forth bullshit. Anyway, let's continue though. Let's see. So, but he notes there weren't enough blockers to make anything happen even if he caught the football. Linebacker Ryan Anderson would have blown him up well short of the goal line. So was this a purposeful blunder meant to keep the Tank alive or a convenient accident? Well, I think you can tell. I think it's far more the purposeful blunder. Because if it's not, then again, the best case scenario, if it's not intentional, then the best case scenario is just absolute incompetence. Just sheer incompetence. You're just not smart enough to realize that your chances are going to be far better if you go into overtime. And then not only that, but, you know, not be smart enough to realize that they've been sniffing out your screens all day, and then your play design probably shouldn't have 2 blockers trying to block 3 to 4 guys. And maybe you should do something a little different. Maybe you should try something a little bit more creative. You know, maybe you should just try, you know, a play action pass with, you know, a pass to the back or a tight end in the flat to the corner of the end zone by the pylon, right? Something that Ryan Tannehill was always really good at. Anyway, I tend to lean toward the latter. Well, this person does. I do not, as you know. No matter how blatantly a franchise chooses to tank, it's hard to imagine that coaches and players would intentionally try to lose games. So here's the thing. I hate when they conflate, though. They say coaches and players. Because I don't think they're the same thing at all. Because, again, the players have absolutely, well, not absolutely no reason, but for the most part, they have the reason, you know, they have more reason to go out there and give it their all than not, right? Because they're competitors, because they do want to win, because they want to put good tape out there to help themselves in the career, either on this team or other teams. So the incentive is more on the side of the players for wanting to go out there and give it their all, right? And not tank, right? I think for the players, you know, and even when they don't want to be part of this situation, it has absolutely nothing to do, like Minkah Fitzpatrick, he didn't leave here because the Dolphins said, hey, you know, we want to win a lot of games, and, you know, we're going to systemically you know, build this team in such a way that we can legitimately be competitive. And then, you know, subsequently go out and put a product on the field that is capable of doing that. No, they did the exact opposite. And by their decisions, clearly stated, we are not trying to win games. So when players like Minkah want to get out, it is their desire to not tank. It is their desire. They are so passionate and so convinced that this is what this organization is doing that I do not want to be here. I do not want to waste the prime years of my career. I, you know, do not want to take a chance of putting, you know, bad tape out on there with this terrible team, having this stain of potentially the worst team ever to exist, right? Like, I don't want all that, and he shouldn't want that. Shouldn't want that. So good on him to get out. But let's continue. But so on the coaches, on the other hand, I mean, they can say it until they're blue in the face, but again, the proof is in the pudding. So the guys on the field, I mean, you know, it's always really hard to tell. I mean, sometimes it can be obvious when guys like give up on a coach or whatever. Sometimes it can be pretty obvious, but for the most part, it's difficult to tell, you know, exactly how much effort guys are giving, especially when it comes to, like, let's say the defense who's out there for the entire fucking game and they're fucking winded as shit. They might be pushing as hard as they can, but it's not very much because they're so gassed, right? So, but, you know, I mean, they can do it as much as they want, but when your team is systematically designed to be as least talented, as least experienced, as least proven productively, with production, blah blah blah, all of that across the board, I mean, what do you expect? I mean, it's just mind-boggling to expect anything else. But here we are, and it's still a lot of people. So it's absolutely intentional from that regard. And then you throw in on top, you know, all of these other really questionable decisions, because these aren't the only ones. There have been other ones throughout the season too. These super questionable decisions that are being made, especially in a game where you had such an opportunity to win it. Miami coach Brian Flores doesn't want to get fired. But see, that's the thing though. People are assuming that, you know, there's a potential he could get fired for being the worst team that ever existed. Except for the fact the guy that hired him told him to do it. So, I mean, sure, I guess that could be the case. But man, hypocrisy goes to a whole nother level then. Because Stephen Ross instructed Brian Flores to tank. So if he got fired for tanking and for being so bad, well, I mean, that just breaks all bounds of reason. So that's not even a fucking concern in this case. And players like Drake want to continue their careers. Well, that's true, whether that's in Miami or somewhere else. But it's awfully fortunate for Miami's front office that they choked away a possible win at the last second against one of the few teams that could possibly steal the top overall draft pick from them. So real quick, I read, you know, a bunch of different articles for you guys from different perspectives and writers and so on and so forth. One for context and transparency, because I preach that and I mean that, but also because I want to point out how glaringly ironic and hypocritical they are in their own articles, because they will literally point out, but it's awfully fortunate for Miami's front office that they choked away a possible win at the last second against one of the few teams that could possibly steal the top overall draft pick from them, and one of the few teams that they could actually squeak a win out against. That's a pretty big fucking coincidence, don't you think? I don't know. I do. So let's continue on. Miami came into Sunday as the overwhelming favorites to land the number 1 overall pick, according to Football Outsiders. But a loss to the winless, reeling Redskins, who just fired head coach Jay Gruden earlier in the week, could have derailed that mission. I think he actually meant to say, but a win to the winless, reeling Redskins. Because if we beat them, that would have put a wrench, could have derailed the mission. That awful 2-point conversion helped the Dolphins avoid disaster. Because again, it's only disastrous if you win when you're trying to lose. So again though, in this article, this writer is framing that if we won, it would be a disaster. And you call yourself competitive. Well, maybe this writer doesn't. But anybody who agrees with that, you call yourself a competitor, you call yourself a fan, if you think winning is a disaster. Like, are you kidding? But no, of course not. Because people who truly fundamentally at their heart believe that, well, I know a lot of people are going to get triggered by this, and I love it, so I don't really care. But you're fucking stupid. Hey, go ahead, find a safe space, go cry somewhere, it's okay. You know, and it's so funny because these people who do get triggered by that, they continue watching anyway. Sycophants, man, or like masochistic. They're like masochistic, right? They're like, they go around, they just want to fucking, whatever causes them misery, they want to indulge in more. It's absolute fucking, but that's why they embrace this kind of approach. Because they're like, oh, I've been so miserable with us being mediocre for all this time. My answer is to be even more miserable by being even worse. Yeah! That's a winning strategy. Okay, well, I have nothing to say to you because you're an idiot. Continuing. This is hardly the first drop of the season for the Dolphins, who have done as little as possible to help their stable of quarterbacks. On Thursday, Flores confirmed that Rosen was the permanent starter and that the quarterback situation was settled. But after he started 15 of 25 for 85 yards and 2 interceptions in this one, Miami switched to Fitzpatrick. The veteran was indeed an improvement over the second-year pro, completing 12 of 18 passes for 132 yards and a touchdown. And so, let's say, hypothetically, that Ryan Fitzpatrick did end up going in over Rosen. He would have a monumental collapse. He would shit the bed, lay an egg, and fucking keel over on the field, and then everybody would be clamoring for Rosen again. Or at least the same fucking inconsistent idiots would be. Because it's a vicious cycle of stupidity. Anyway, continuing on. But the switch just brings up more questions about the Dolphins' overall strategy. The questions on their strategy and so on and so forth continue to mount, yet we have fewer and fewer answers. Or we gain no answers. Where was I? Fitzpatrick may give the Dolphins the most opportunity to win games this season, but that should be exactly what the team doesn't want. Again, if you fall in line to this bullshit fucking tank process crap. In a season that's already lost, the franchise should be determined to see whether Rosen has a future with the team or whether they should draft Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, or another quarterback in the upcoming 2020 NFL draft. Again, another thing that just doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever, right? Because first of all, again, I don't think Fitzpatrick actually is the better quarterback, or in the long term or in the big picture gives you the better chance to win. I think Rosen probably does that overall. But again, to my other points, neither one, and I was saying this from the very beginning, neither one of them, because they have proven it in their careers up to this point, are going to perform well behind this garbage offensive line. So again, I was proven right. But it doesn't make any fucking sense though, because, well, even while I would say he does probably give you the better option, you really can't even evaluate him. I mean, the dude got sacked 5 times officially. One for sure got taken back by, I think, a penalty. And, you know, that's not even counting all the other hits and hurries. I mean, like, it's absurdity. Like, you can't even accurately evaluate the guy. That's why you're setting him up for failure on all fronts. You're virtually guaranteed that he's not going to be the franchise guy here in Miami, thereby virtually guaranteeing the fact that, you know, the 2nd and the 5th round pick you gave for him are wastes as well, so on, so on, so on, so on. And it's just going to be this ever avalanching fucking snowball. And it's not going to get any better until the root of the problem gets rooted out. What is that? Stephen Ross. He needs to go. Sign my petition to get Stephen Ross to sell the team as majority owner of the Miami Dolphins. Continue on. No one wants to watch their team go 0-16. Okay, but that's a stupid comment because there are tons of fans that are literally rooting for us to go 0-16 so we can get the number 1 pick. Just sheer and it doesn't matter how dumb it is. No one wants to watch their team go 0-16. God damn it. I mean, they even acknowledged earlier on that there are people that, you know, like fucking are that, you know, and they are apparently one that are on board with this tanking for fucking Tua shit. And they're trying to make arguments that they should be trying to lose. But that shit, Fitzpatrick may give the Dolphins the most opportunity to win games this season, but that should be exactly what the team doesn't want. So you're making an argument that you are a person who wants to watch this team go 0-16, and then you just said no one wants to watch their team go... Like, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because these idiots live in this fucking false reality that just doesn't operate at all whatsoever off of facts or logic or reason or data or truth. So, I mean, like I said, again, those people, I mean, they get super triggered when I call them stupid. Whatever, I don't care. You're stupid. Sorry. Sad day for you. Maybe not, try not being so dumb. I know it's hard for you, but maybe give it a shot. It's just, that shit fucking blows my mind. But you're getting what you want. Anyway, but in a post-process world, this loss, whether it was intentional or not, makes the Dolphins the true winners, in parentheses, losers, of the Tank Bowl. Well, they won the Tank Bowl, to be sure. But overall, again, I think that they're going to be massive losers. Why? There's the one set in stone set of data points that we know. We've lost 5 games and we are 0-5. And we lost this game. So there you go. We have now been set as losers 5 times. We expect this season to be basically all of the same thing. And so if we end up going 0-16, 1-15, 2-14, that's still losers 14, 15, 16 times. And then what? You think we're going to miraculously next year just fucking do so much better? No, we're going to be tremendous losers next year. And then, of course, as you guys already know, I don't think this even has a chance of coming to fruition for a number of reasons. The potential shutdown of the NFL. The fact that any team that did go in like the history of the NFL pretty much, or at least the past couple decades, any team that went 1-15 or 0-16 historically has taken at least 3.5 years just to get to the playoffs, let alone win a game. And it's 7.5 years and counting to win a game in the playoffs. This regime, Brian Flores' contract is for 5 years. Stephen Ross has proven he doesn't have that kind of patience. It's never going to last. It's never going to work out. It's not going to come to fruition. But people want to continue, whatever. Like I said, I got nothing to say to the people who just want to deny reality. All right, so I pretty much gave my entire analysis now. So let me go ahead and just get through some of these statistics so I can close this out. And, we can just turn the page, man, and move on to the next one and just see how it goes from here. Again, I think next week's going to be really rough, going up to Buffalo to play Buffalo. Anyway, so we had 271 total yards. That is a minor uptick, so okay, some marginal false hope for you. They had 311. We had 187 passing yards. They had 166. We had 84 rushing yards. Again, a slight uptick, from the last game and overall. But a portion of that was also because our quarterbacks were running for their lives. But they had 145 on the ground. We were at 3.9 yards per play. They were at 5.4. No team gave up a fumble, although there were a couple throughout the day. We did throw 2 interceptions. We were 21% on third down. They were 18. We had the ball for 32-39. They had it for 27-21. We had 5 penalties. They had 6. Overall, considering the level of the opponent, this was a pretty, terrible loss. But even more to the, growing obvious truth that, every aspect of this is intentional. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but anyway, passing statistics. Ryan Fitzpatrick, because as we know, he came in, very late in the third quarter, just a minute or two left. Played for the rest of the fourth quarter. He was 12 of 18 for 66.7% completion percentage, 132 yards, 1 touchdown with a 106.7 passer rating. Josh Rosen was 15 for 25 with a 60% completion percentage, 85 yards, 2 interceptions, and a 2.1 passer rating. So yes, again, Josh Rosen had a terrible day. But both of these guys have had pretty terrible days, drives, plays, what have you, behind this offensive line with all the drops and so on and so forth. Case Keenum was 13 of 25 for 52%, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 99.8 passer rating. And see, look, Case Keenum didn't even have to play stellar. He just had to play, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I'm just going to say with the first thing that comes to mind then. Teeth cringingly average. Like boringly average. That's probably better. He just had to play super fucking average and, you know, whatever. Rushing statistics. Kenyon Drake led the way. 10 rushes, 40 yards, a 4 average. Mark Walton had 6 for 32 yards and a 5.3. Adrian Peterson led the way for them. 23 rushes, 118 yards and a 5.1 average. Chris Thompson, 3 rushes, 12 yards with a 4. Case Keenum, 4 rushes, 10 yards and a 2.5. Receiving statistics. Mike Gesicki had a beautiful catch, by the way, which shows why we brought him here, but why, let's keep the facts straight, why Gase drafted him to be here. Because now, you know, a bunch of people like hyping up Mike Gesicki after the good game that he had and that really amazing catch, and like, yeah, Mike Gesicki. But let's keep in mind, it is a Gase pick, and that's exactly what we brought him here for, and he just needed time to develop into that. Now, you know, they hurt his chances of development by surrounding, you know, him and making this team to the as depleted and inept as possible. But, you know, he is a really good player with a lot of upside, and he is still only like in the middle of his rookie contract. So still not even, you know, close to time to evaluating him. But he led the way with 3 of 7 for 51 yards. Mark Walton was 5 of 6 for 43. Preston Williams 2 of 6 for 31. Kenyon Drake 6 of 9 for 30. Devontae Parker 3 of 4 for 28 and a score. Allen Hurns 2 of 2 for 16. And Albert Wilson 5 of 6 for 15. And so you see there are a lot of drops there. Mike Gesicki had 4 drops. Mark Walton had 1. Preston had 4. Kenyon Drake had 3. Parker had 1. And Wilson had 1. Still tons and tons of drops. Terry McLaurin led the way for them, 4 of 7 for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and at least not even fucking, you know, all that great of stats to go with it. There's just a ton of drops and not very good stats. Jeremy Sprinkle was 2 of 3 for 24, and Adrian Peterson was 2 of 2 for 18. Fumbles, Daniel Kilgore had 1, but it didn't get lost. Nick O'Leary also had 1, but it was not lost. Same for Case Keenum. Each of them had a fumble, but was recovered by their respective teams. Defensive statistics, Rashad Jones led the way for us. 7 solo tackles, 1 assisted, and a tackle for loss. Raekwon McMillan, 5 solo, 4 assisted. Jerome Baker, 3 solo, 1 assisted. Eric Rowe, 1 solo tackle, 5 assisted, and a pass defense. Also, this has been a constant theme, and I've pointed this out before. Notice the difference in statistics from our defense to theirs. Theirs is constantly littered with tons and tons of tackles across the board. Tackles for loss, sacks, passes defense, interceptions, blah, blah, blah. And ours is kind of just like, right? So Rashad Jones, 7-1 with a tackle for loss. Raekwon McMillan down to 5 and 4 with no other stats. Jerome Baker down to 3 solo and assisted tackle. And then Eric Rowe, 1 solo, 5 assisted with a pass defense. Walt Aikens, 1 solo tackle, a tackle for loss. Bobby McCain, a solo tackle and a pass defense. Christian Wilkins, 1 solo tackle, 1 pass defense. Nick Needham, 1 solo tackle, 1 pass defense. Now let's juxtapose that to their defense, and how did their guys do? And this is pretty consistent across the board from these other teams. Landon Collins had 10 solo tackles, 2 assisted, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 forced fumble, and 2 passes defensed. Let's see, they had in that game, real quick, just overall, they had, what was it, 5, let's see, it was, I want to say 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. Hang on, I'm pulling it up right now. 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. They had 1 forced fumble. They had 6 passes defense. They had 5 sacks and 7 tackles for loss. Right. Overall. But so Landon Collins, 10 solo tackles, 2 assisted, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 forced fumble, 2 passes defensed. Quentin Dunbar, 5 solo tackles, 1 assisted with an interception and a pass defensed. John Bostic, 4 solo tackles, 4 assisted with a tackle for loss. Cole Holcomb, 4 solo, 2 assisted. Fabian Moreau, 3 solo, 2 assisted. Josh Norman, 3 solo tackles. Jonathan Allen, 3 solo, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and a pass defense. Sean Dion Hamilton, 2 solo tackles, 1 tackle for loss, an interception, and a pass defense. Matt Ioannidis, 1 solo tackle, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Trayvon Hester, 1 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. And Montez Sweat, 1 solo, 1 assisted, and a pass defense. In the kicking game, Jason Sanders was 1 for 1 on his field goal with a long of 39 and 1 for 1 on his extra point. Dustin Hopkins was 1 of 2 on his field goals. Again, also part of the reason why it was so close. A missed field goal opportunity for them. With a long of 21, 2 and 2 on his extra points. In the punt game, Matt Hawk punted 7 times, as did Tress Way for them. Matt Hawk was 44.3 average with 3 inside the 20, a long of 60. Tress Way had 7 punts for 45 average, 2 inside the 20 with a long of 53. Kenny Drake had 1 kickoff return for us of 15 yards, obvious average of 15. Steven Sims had 1 for them of 21 yards, obvious average of 21. Punt return, Preston Williams had 4 for us, 10.5 average with a long of 21. And Trey Quinn had 2 for them, 7 average with a long of 15. Well, so that's that, guys. I mean, look, again, you know, from here on out, I mean, I'm gonna keep, you know, the conversation going. I'm gonna keep pointing out these things, but I'm gonna keep letting them come, man. I'm gonna let all these games roll through, one after another, and until, you know, and look, at the end of the day, the first and foremost thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna report the facts, the statistics, the data, the quotes, everything, whatever it is, whatever's necessary, whatever I find, you know, all of the relevant stuff, full context, different writers, different sources, right? I want you to have it all. So that's what's important to me. I'm going to give you all of that, and then I'm going to give you the absolute best perspective that I possibly can, the best evaluation, and then let you guys decide for yourself. So I'm going to keep doing that. Again, we got this game against Buffalo this next week. It's probably going to be a brutal one. I don't think, you know, I really hope that it's certainly not anywhere near to a full-scale blowout of being, you know, defeated by 25 points or more. I hope not, because if that's the case, then that'll push us even further, quicker in the direction of being the worst team to ever exist, and I don't want that. That would be terrible. I hope they can somehow manage to turn it around enough to avoid that. It's with each game that passes, it's looking more and more difficult, especially as the injuries mount up. But I'm hoping, and I'm really, really hoping we can get a win somewhere. I do not want to go 0-16. But I don't think it's going to start this upcoming game against the Bills in their stadium. And, yeah, man. So, but, you know, we'll see. We'll see how the rest of this week plays out, and we'll see how that game plays out. Again, I don't think it's going to be a full blowout, but I think that there is a chance we could lose by anywhere between, you know, 15 to 24 points, which I dub a, you know, mini blowout or semi blowout, whatever. So, I hope not even that, man. I hope they can somehow manage to keep it close, but with the way the Bills are playing and looking right now, and God, with the way that we're looking right now, especially when we go there, like maybe we can keep it a little bit closer when they come down here, and maybe we don't get to even, you know, mini blowouts. I don't know, man. It's anyway. One game at a time, one day at a time. And again, guys, we'll do this together. Make sure, you know, you share this to your friends and family. Get it out there, especially if you like my perspective, because it's different than pretty much everybody else. So, and it's, you know, And I try my absolute best to keep it as fundamentally rooted in facts and logic, reason, data, statistics, all of that as I possibly can, with the best evaluation as I possibly can. So if you like it, and if you like my perspective, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.